Namaste everyone. So next week we have a deep dive into the practice of one of our 5 virtues of Arhatic yoga, and that's the virtue of honesty, non-lying, accurate perception, correct expression, objectivity, non-falsehood. So from the name of it, realize what a wide virtue it is. And some people may be wondering, like 5 hours for just one virtue, really? Is there that much to talk about this virtue? And the answer simply is yes. And there's even much more. When we first start with Arhatic prep, we're super excited with the practices of purification that we learn. And we start doing them on a regular basis based on the schedule that we're given. And then we follow the CD and realize that we're removing layers and layers and layers of ourselves. But then at one point in time, we realize that nothing more is coming out, that we really are not tapping into the true potential of practicing these virtues and this purification. It doesn't mean that there isn't more to come out. It just means that now the layers are much deeper and we have to really on the source, on the triggers, and to go deeper into our practices, including the practice of purification, not just the meditations. So this is what we're going to attempt to do in these sessions on both days next week. Look at it from a very specific angle because, as I said, it's a very wide topic. We are going to explore it from the angle of philosophy, from the angle of psychology, and from the angle of neuroscience. Specifically going into the topic of honesty when it comes to authenticity. So we're going to look into that, but also how sometimes we think we are practicing honesty, but the reality, and this is a bit of understanding of neuroscience and the research behind it. And then after we get that understanding, we know in our school understanding by itself is not enough. We need to practice. So we are going to discover some ways to rewire our brain to help us practice this virtue at a deeper, more profound level, especially when it comes to the inner critique, which many of us have, that voice that keeps nagging in our head. And also we are going to look at new practices for building connections with our loved ones, with people around us, the understanding of our shadow, and the shadow is what psychologists talk about, which is the sometimes referred to as the negative side of us. I don't like using that word, and I'm going to explain more about it when we do those exercises. But going into the shadow aspect of us, which is something that many people try to avoid doing. We try to avoid going into the dark side of ourselves. We try to pretend it's not there. We bury our head like an ostrich in the ground and hope that the problem or the issue goes away, but the reality is it's not going away by us hiding our head in the ground or by compartmentalizing it or shelving it or just not doing anything about it. So how do we work with our shadow aspect to transform ourselves, to become better versions of ourselves, to truly transcend our limitations, to transcend whatever is holding us back with regards to the practice of honesty and non-lying, and finally to get some tools for creating clearer communication with others, because sometimes we want to be honest, but our communication doesn't come through clearly. And so Master Choa tells us, he says something, we understand it, we share it with others, they understand it, and somewhere along the line, it's like Chinese whisper. The message is lost in translation or is lost in communication. Why is that important? What is the objective of practicing honesty and non-lying? Master Choa gives us the answer. He says, when you have mastered the virtue of honesty and non-lying, everything you say will tend to manifest. I repeat that. Master Choa says when we practice and master the virtue of honesty and non-lying, the entire bit, discernment, objectivity, all of that, what we say will manifest. Imagine that. Many of us now, it's October, it's the end of the year, we're starting to think of next year, and some of us may be revisiting our resolutions or planning for the future. And it's important to be aware of the benefits of practicing the virtue. We see this in application in some of the videos of Master Choa, where he gets many people and he says, you're healed, you're healed, you're healed. And the people are healed. It's incredible, no? The guru that we have. Now, of course, we're not at that level, but our objective is to become mini GMCKS, to become better versions of ourselves. And imagine all that we can do and manifest if we really practice the virtue of honesty. Imagine all the goodness we can bring into our lives and the lives of our loved ones. So hope to see you next week to this different, slightly different approach to the practice of the virtue, where we bring in a bit of theory and a bit of practice and try to take our practices into the next level. Atma Namaste.